So now we're moving on to personality and skills type questions. Now this is a topic that a lot of my students really struggle with because sometimes they don't really know how to talk about themselves or which examples would be suitable to talk about. Now we're going to go through an example MMI station, and then also I'll show you a mark scheme of the station as well later on. So when the MMI station pops up on your screen, just pause the video and have a go for 4 or 5 minutes, maybe even record yourself. And then after that, we'll go through an example video.
Hi there, welcome to MMI Station 14. This station is all about your personality. Sure. So, as I'm sure you're aware, as a doctor, it's very important to have a wide range of skills.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So, to begin with, could you tell me about your communication skills?
Yeah. So for me, I understand communication to be really important when you're applying to medical school and you want to become a doctor. Mm-hmm. So I went about trying to understand what does that mean in clinical practice. Mm-hmm. So I spent time on the wards, specifically in the diabetic wards. Okay. And actually I met a lot of patients who were for the first time being diagnosed diabetes, and this was a huge problem and big part of making that decision for patients. Mm-hmm. And here it was essential that the doctors communicated well with the patient, you know, about the condition and how it should be treated and managed, because this was a new lifestyle. So that was the first time I began to understand how important it was that doctors could communicate that very clearly. And actually how that was essential to practicing medicine. It wasn't about delivering a drug. It wasn't necessarily completely about providing a treatment or procedure. It was about how do you communicate. Communication itself was the healing factor.
Okay, so one thing I really like about this answer is the introduction. He gave a really nice summary with regards to why communication is important as a medical student, which is fantastic. Now, he also gave some fantastic examples from his work experience, which he talked about, but then one maybe thing that he can improve on is he then started to waffle a bit and kind of went a bit off topic. So just make sure that you're sticking to why that was important or why communication was important in that setting.
So would you say communication is more important than academic and scientific ability?
Yeah.
Or would you say it's the opposite?
So I think it's really important that they go hand in hand. Because, for example, in that scenario where I was observing the doctor first time diagnosing an individual as diabetic, he had to be able to understand and be able to articulate the condition. So how it presents, how to manage the treatment that's required. But you also had to be able to really communicate the side effects that could be accompanying the treatments. And that requires a scientific knowledge and understanding. But equally, it was important that he was compassionate and empathetic with actually this was a change in lifestyle and someone could be really distressed by this news. Sure. And it was in the doctor's responsibility to reassure, but also manage those emotions. And that's all about how you communicate. So the two are really important.
Again, this is a really nice answer because they're giving a really balanced point of view. They're talking about why communication is important, but then also why the academic side is important as well. Now, again, one thing that he does well here is he actually explains why communication is important and also why the academic side is important as well. So one tip that I would give for a question like this is just having a think about from your own experience when maybe you've used communication in the past or when you have seen communication being more important than the academic side.
Yeah, so as you said, working in stressful situations is a big part of it. Can you give me an example of when you've worked in a team, for example, when things haven't been going great or you've been in a very stressful situation and how you managed that?
Yeah, so at school, I was a part of a small group of students where we worked to create a charity project. Okay. And this was to see how we could potentially raise money for a charity that the school had partnered with. And at the time it was Great Ormond Street, so you know, with my interest in medicine, this was a great opportunity. And as part of it, we created a team, a school team, where we had to come up with ideas and fundraise about, you know, how to raise money in a way that's effective. And in this, we had different personalities. Some people were shy, some people were more confident. And I guess in that environment, I learned how to tap into those individuals in order for us to work together as a team in order to deliver the campaign that we did. So eventually, we managed to raise over £1,000 over the course of the time. And that was all down to our teamwork and our ability to engage with each other, understand our differences, weaknesses, and strengths, and how we could gain the most from our own abilities. So that for me was my experience of teamwork and how I demonstrated that.
Again, this is a really good answer here. They seem very, very well prepared for a question like this. They use the STAR technique really, really well. Now, one thing that I like to teach my students is actually the STARF technique, so using an F at the end of the STAR. Now, that F stands for future. Now, this will be really useful because anything that you've learned from this experience, you can actually talk about in the future and say that, for example, when you become a medical student, it would be maybe useful to use these skills that you've developed in the past. Again, the STARF technique is something that I'll go through in one of the other tutorials.
Okay, brilliant. And a last question, in terms of different healthcare specialties, you've got GPs, for example, you've got hospital physicians. Many people say that GPs can build a very long-term relationship with their patients. What do you think the key benefits is of having that continuity of care for GPs compared to, for example, a hospital physician in A&E who sees a new patient every single day? What do you think the benefits are of having that continuity of care?
Continuity of care is really important, and it is important in both environments, in both primary care, so with GPs, and secondary care with hospital doctors. And I saw firsthand how important it was in GP for GPs, because they would see their patient regularly, and those with worse conditions they would see more often than those who had less worse conditions. And so continuous care allowed the GP to build a rapport. That meant that the doctor could respond to any issues very quickly and actually begin to see patterns. So was this person just generally quiet, or actually was this more a sign of depression or stress, having known that individual and their temperament? That was really important.
So he links to his work experience really well in this answer. He also gives an example, so he talks about the fact that continuity of care is important because, for example, you might not know whether someone is just being quiet or whether they're actually depressed. Now, another really important part about continuity of care is that it really is a standout part of being a GP. When you're a GP, you see patients right from when they're young to all the way to maybe when they're elderly and going into palliative care, for example. So maybe discuss why continuity of care is important in different settings. So for example, in the hospital and also in the GP. And maybe give an example of your own personal experience of continuity of care. Maybe you've seen the same GP for a large period of time. So that's the end of the station. I thought it was a very impressive answer that he gave to all the questions. He seemed quite confident, he backed his answers up with examples, and he also came across as quite a likeable and genuine person as well. So on your screen there should be a mark scheme appearing. Just maybe self-assess how well you've done in your answer and make sure to continue to record yourself for 4 or 5 minutes just so that you can watch your answers at a later date as well. Do you have an interview for medicine, dentistry or veterinary school? The interview is the final hurdle of your application, but also the most competitive. Are you nervous about your interview or unsure where to start preparation? Here's where we can help. With a few clicks, you'll get access to 100 Medic Mind video tutorials covering 10 hours of theory, 150 MMI stations, live weekly webinars and more. You'll get a breakdown of all the topics interviews typically cover and real-life MMI stations. Our award-winning interview course is trusted by over 12,000 students in over 37 countries and has been written by official medical school examiners. So, what are you waiting for? Get started on our course today.